Hey, how's it going YouTube? This is your boy Chosen and welcome to this week's episode review. And I gotta say, this week's episode was completely worth them stretching out last week's. I said last week that it may have sucked that they extended the dialogue longer than it needed to be, but two things. One, the anime will always try to flesh out the story. Sometimes it'll have its positives and sometimes its negatives. And two, it clearly paid off, whether it was intentional or not, because now from literally the jump of the episode, we started off with the action all the way until the end. I said that I'd rather have them do what they did with last week's episode so that we could enjoy the full glory of it in this one. Like, imagine if they put a quarter of this fight in last week's episode and left it off there. And also, can we just take in, we are approaching halfway through the manga and the anime. The manga is at like chapter 54, soon to be 55. Half of 55 is about 27. But anyways, let's begin the review. Boruto episode 186 starts with the team hiding out and waiting for Ao in order to execute their plan. In order to alert the team of Ao's presence, Mitsuki uses one of the snakes, kind of like a recon drone, in order to spot Ao coming. And I gotta say, I'm happy that the anime includes small little details like this that some would only understand by watching the complete show. If you're someone who has watched the non-manga related episodes, then you know Mitsuki has used his snakes for these kinds of purposes many times before. Best example was the Mitsuki retrieval arc. This is also a scene that was not put in the manga, so it's one of those things to where you're gonna see it and be like, oh yeah, I remember when he did that in episode whatever. But yeah, I thought that little detail was pretty cool. Anyways, Konohamaru tells the team to not let their guard down with Ao, as even though he lost the Byakugan, he basically replaced his loss of power with scientific ninja tools. Sorry about that. Boruto goes on to say that Ao gave up on being a shinobi and claims himself to be a tool of Kara, so they have to defeat him no matter what. Scene right after gives us Ao approaching the abandoned building they were at as he mocks the team for their lack of skill when it comes to hiding. And just like that, even without the Byakugan, Ao finds Mitsuki as the two duel it out with some taijutsu. Mitsuki then shoots out lightning style snake lightning, but of course, because of the gauntlet that Katasuke created, Ao simply absorbs it without having to deplete any of his own chakra. All of a sudden, Konohamaru flies in from the sky and performs fire-style flaming meteors, which I guess is basically Phoenix Flower. As Ao was absorbing the ninjutsu, he picks up on how Konohamaru is basically spamming the techniques like a video game, without having any concern for his chakra, but doesn't yet quite understand what exactly their plan is. Now it's Sarada's turn, and she tries to take on Ao with some taijutsu. She manages to land a successful attack, but only for Ao to get behind her and knock her back. He then goes on to say that Katasuke's weapons are pretty impressive and durable, as this claim was easily backed up by what happens next. Sarada recovers and shoots a fireball at Ao, who absorbs it. Mitsuki and Konohamaru try to hit him at his blind spot but miss, and it's now that the three decide to attack him in unison, all spamming their signature range type jutsus. Konohamaru and Sarada spam fireball techniques as Mitsuki spams snake lightning. And this is what Ao meant when stating how durable they are, as he is literally able to absorb all of their attacks with just one of the gauntlets. Ao then pieces it all together. He figures out their plan was to distract him long enough for Boruto to deliver the final blow at one of his blind spots. He notes that he needs to come out before his teammates run out of chakra, so to do so, he'd have to attack very soon. Just as he says this, Boruto comes rushing at him from above, attempting to strike with the chakra blade. Of course, since Ao saw through their plan, he counters with the same weapon he used to kill Mujino. Ao knocks Boruto back, causing him to drop the weapon, and as Boruto rushes over to grab it, Ao unfortunately gets a hold of it first and straight up impales Boruto straight through the chest. He mocks Boruto and basically tells him how predictable his plan was. All of a sudden, Mitsuki extends his arms, forcing Ao to hold onto the chakra blade. I wonder why. As we can all expect, Boruto was a shadow clone, used to force Ao to be put into a position where he would hold the chakra blade. And as Mitsuki locks Ao's grip, he suddenly falls to his knees due to the sudden loss of chakra, and we know a couple episodes back that the chakra blade is flawed due to it requiring way too much chakra in order to maintain itself. So the team, knowing this, used its weakness to their advantage as Boruto comes swooping in with a Rasengan. Ao tells them the plan was great, but they still failed to execute since he can just absorb the Rasengan. And instead of Boruto shooting the Rasengan at Ao, he first uses his own gauntlet's ability to absorb Ao's, which left room for Boruto to attack, breaking the ninjutsu absorption gauntlet, as Boruto states that now Ao is a lot slower and lost the gauntlet, meaning he's now at a bigger disadvantage. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot this part happened in the manga, so when I saw it, it was like seeing it for the first time, and it was genius. This is easily the best plan Team 7 has ever pulled off so far in the entire show. Using a flaw to their advantage to weaken Ao while also disabling his ability to absorb ninjutsu, now giving them the complete advantage in battle. They made it seem like it was going to be a pretty predictable plan, but in reality, it was pretty smart and not something a lot of people would have thought to do, so kudos to them. As the team starts to feel a little more confident, Konohamaru picks up on something. All of a sudden, he rushes over to push Boruto out of the way and gets hit with random super speed attacks from above. As everyone is confused, we then learn that these attacks came from what is called mirror drones, most likely created by Kara. As much as some may think the drones came out of nowhere, they were probably hiding high in the sky just as precaution if Ao needed to use them, as he literally says, "I never thought I'd be pushed into a position to use these drones." Katasuke states that they are probably linked to him by transmitting his chakra onto them over long distances. That's basically why I think they were just soaring through above, probably following Ao until he decided to use them. Katasuke also says he can use these drones to drop bombs from above like rain. Again, another point backing up by claim on why the team wasn't able to sense them at first. They were just too high in the sky. Ao goes on to say he was hoping he didn't have to resort to using these, as Boruto questions if it's because this style of fighting isn't ninja-like at all. Boruto mentions how Ao claimed to be a tool for Kara, but yet still has some attachments to being a shinobi. And this is now when we finally learn of Ao's true purpose of joining Kara. How he goes from being a worldwide known hero to joining a criminal organization with serious ill intentions. Ao says that he died on the battlefield and was reborn with Kara. He says that Kara gave him power and purpose after he felt so useless. And this part right here is why this week, for those who watch my Tuesday and Thursday discussion videos on Boruto and Sasuke, why I decided to focus this week on scientific ninja tools playing a bigger part in this story. Ao says the infamous line we heard both Boruto and Kawaki say in episode 1. This marks the end of shinobi. We must make the transition to new power. In both those two videos, I've explained why I think scientific ninja tools could be the biggest factor in rather helping or negatively impacting the shinobi world. So far in the anime, these tools go both ways. It really all depends on who's control of them. So I'm really glad they had this dialogue between Ao and Boruto, as it could foreshadow what's to come in the future. How the shinobi world could eventually adjust to life where these tools are just a regular thing. And as for Ao, he basically goes on to say that without power, he felt useless, depressed, and lost any meaning to his life. So when he mentions that he was reborn with Kara, he meant spiritually. He found passion in his life as a living scientific ninja tool. Boruto questions why he didn't just return to the mist and live a normal life, but that's not at all what Ao wanted. And again, this is why this dialogue scene is so important, because one of the things we can praise for the Naruto franchise is their ability to connect real-world dilemmas onto their story. In war, believe it or not, for as many people there are who will step down after one, there are those who enjoy it, who live for the action. Ao is clearly one of those people. With an arm and leg gone and half of his face, and honestly even after Katasuke came to fix him up, he wasn't the same man he used to be. We saw that in the flashback. But with Kara, like I said in one of my other episode reviews, they modified his body, gave him power which allowed him to get back onto the battlefield. He's doing what he wants to do, even if it means abandoning his village and the alliance and everything he used to be. He goes on to mock Mujino and say that if he was only stronger like him, he wouldn't have died. And then tells Boruto that not everyone can be as strong as Naruto no matter how hard they train, which isn't fair. This again also applies to real life dilemmas like sports. Hard work beats talent, yes, but when talent works just as hard, what can you do? This message was already touched on with Lee, but to be honest, what came out of it was just to be the strongest version of you that you can be. Cause Rock Lee can work his ass off, but if Naruto works just as hard with 6-path Sage mode, what the hell is Lee supposed to do? That's basically what I was trying to say. The man is clearly power hungry and was grieving after losing the Byakugan and his body, but Kara gave him back his confidence as a man. Boruto then takes charge as the drones head towards him and starts absorbing all their attacks with his gauntlet. Boruto tries to throw a shuriken at Ao, but he gets disintegrated instantly by the drones. He then performs Boruto's Stream, another technique that is not shown in the manga, and it's only a move people are going to remember through watching the anime. He shoots himself to the drones and plants a paper bomb on 2 of them and takes it out. Slowly but surely, Boruto starts taking out the drones one by one. He then shoots another Boruto Stream at 2 drones, gets behind them, and throws 2 lightning-enhanced shurikens, destroying them both. Boruto then performs water-style water wave, but the jutsu gets completely taken out by the drones protecting Ao. Can I just say that in this sequence, Boruto used 3 different kinds of nature releases. Wind style to move himself around, and lightning and water style on the offense. Prodigy. We then get another dialogue between Ao and Boruto, which I've already touched on, so I'm going to be skipping this part and moving on to the next fight scene where I was seen fighting 2 of Boruto's shadow clones, who I will point out don't possess the gauntlet, as Ao says this himself when catching the real Boruto who does possess it, making it easy to tell who's who. Sarada tries to rush in to save her lover, I mean friend, but is saved by Mitsuki, as Ao tells her not to be hasty as he'll get to them right after dealing with Boruto. Ao tells Boruto that when he met him on the train, had Had he known he was his enemy, he would have died then. So all this really was a delay in fate. Boruto, for like the 1000th time, tells Ao that because he's not a shinobi, he won't lose to him. And we then learn that it was just a shadow clone that Boruto had wear the gauntlet to fool Ao into thinking it was the real one. Boruto then repeats what his father told them when they fought, and that a shinobi must read the hidden message within the hidden message. Boruto then comes charging at Ao and successfully hits him with the Rasengan, knocking him down, also destroying his scientific ninja tool arm, meaning now Ao physically cannot fight. As Ao was down, he commends Boruto for defeating him, and Boruto literally emphasizes the phrase, "Karma's a bitch," as he pulls up the same screwdriver Ao put on his neck. Ao tells Boruto to finish the job and even goes on to intentionally provoke Boruto by throwing shade at Mujino's death. Boruto of course doesn't do it, however, because just like his father, that's not his way of being a shinobi. He tells Ao to use the screwdriver to fix himself up. Ao tells him in this aspect he's just like his father, and one day, continuing like this will cost him. Boruto reminds Ao how these ninja tools don't originate from evil. There's no good or evil to its core, it just all depends on how you use it, and that applies to the same power Ao holds within him. It's not too late to change. Ao tells Boruto that tools don't think about stuff like that, but Boruto retaliates and says that's not true. It's the tools inside of you that have no human emotion. But he himself is well alive and could use his powers for the greater good. And this is where Boruto hits Ao hard and tells him if he was an emotional tool like he says, he wouldn't have mourned the death of his friends, like that one episode when he went to visit the leaf. Again, another moment you are only going to understand as you watch the anime. That's 3 times now. As the team reflects on their victory, Ao notices a figure standing on top of the abandoned building, which turns out to be Kashin Koji, who uses a summoning jutsu called Summoning Steam Toad. We don't see the summoning itself, but by looking at Boruto's shocked expression, it's probably pretty damn cool, and that's where this episode ends. Guys, to me this episode was a clear 10. We finally understand Ao's full story from after the war until now, clearly seeing how different Boruto feels about the ninja tools, talking as if he's proud to use them. We got amazing quality animation. The soundtrack was there when it needed to be. The dialogue scenes weren't boring, and they were actually pretty relatable to the real world, which I know a lot of people who don't enjoy the anime keep on mentioning. So this episode gave us everything and shows once again the great potential this series has, especially when they cover our favorite parts in the manga. But anyways guys, that's gonna do for today's video. Be sure to let me know how you guys felt about this episode in the comments down below, and I'll catch you on the next one.